Welcome to Shastrikara's Astrological series. This is the presentation exclusively about the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, his time of birth analysis. I'm doing the predictive analysis along with the astrological analysis. First of all, I came to know that there are four different types of times of birth that is floating on the internet. And so I tried to figure it out which one could be the best, closest to one. And for that to do it, I picked up four important events in his life. His marriage, when he got married at the age of 18. So that's the first important thing in his life event. Next, when he joined politics. Third, when first time he became the Chief Minister of Gujarat. And fourth, first time he became the Prime Minister of India. So these are the four events that I'm picked up the dates, and then with respect to four birth charts with the four different times of birth, using the astrological methods, I'm trying to figure it out which one could be the best, closest time of birth that I can find that suffice the events that happened from an astrological perspective. This is completely, as I said earlier, it's a predictive analysis using the predictive analytics that were being used in the IT industry. I just used some of the techniques that I learned for the predictive analytics, and I'm just trying to superimpose on this particular topic. Please use this presentation for educational purposes only, and I'll be thankful if you do not sidetrack your opinions. And please, for any other, if you feel that this is something that is not up to the standard, please feel free to let me know. So I will do more detailed analysis based upon the feedback. And thank you very much for watching my video. Once again, I hope, like all other videos, you will like this one too. Thank you and enjoy the video. Here is the first event that I considered for my analysis, which is the date of the event is marriage. Marriage in a person's life is a very important event, so I took it, and the source information that I got for all the events is Wikipedia. And according to Wikipedia, he got engaged at the age of 13 and he got married in 1968 when he was 18 years old. I don't know exact the date of marriage or the month of marriage. So when I do the analysis, I have to look for all the possibilities between January 1st of 1968 till December 31st of 1968. To make sure that the data that was provided is correct, I went in the same Wikipedia and looked at his wife's Wikipedia website and found out that even there also it mentioned the same. So what I'm going to take is when he was 18 years old, he got married. This is the first event that I'm going to consider for my analysis. The second event is for any person is selecting a career, and for Mr. Modi, the joining the politics was something that he had opted for. He initiated in 1978. That means around 20 years. 78 means 18 plus 10, 28 years old. When he was 28 years old, keep in mind, when he was between 27 and 28 years old, he initiated the thought of entering the politics. He became a BJP member in 1987. 1987 means approximately, he was born on 1950, so approximately 37 years old. So this is very important in his life, initiating the career in politics, and then finally becoming a BJP political party member in 1987. The third event that I considered was when he became the Chief Minister of Gujarat for the first time. He joined the political party in 1987, and then he became the Chief Minister of Gujarat on 7th October 2001. I got the exact date of he was sworn in. He was selected as the chief minister on 3rd October, but took oath on 7th October. So what the important event here is, in 2001 October, he became the chief minister for Gujarat. The last important event in his life is becoming the Prime Minister of India, and on 26th May 2014 he was sworn in as the Prime Minister of India. So this is the fourth important event that I considered for my predictive analysis. Let me start analyzing the birth chart for Mr. Narendra Modi for all the 4 time of births that were available on internet. The very first thing that I took was the 11 a.m. which I saw a number of people using it, including the in Astrological magazine. I think it was December 2021 or January of 2022. I don't remember exactly, but even that author also used the same 11 a.m. AstroSage website used 11 a.m. and have seen some other websites using 11 a.m. So I presumed that this might be the right time of birth, since most of the people have used it for their analysis. So I took this as the first possible correct time of birth. So when I generated the birth chart using Hora software, this is what I noticed it. With 11 a.m. as the time of birth, the very first thing that I noticed is Lagna is in Rasi Sandhi, Mercury is in Rasi Sandhi, Sun is in Rasi Sandhi, and Mars is in Rasi Sandhi. So 3 planets and Lagna, all the 4 are in Rasi Sandhi. That is when, based upon my experience of looking so many charts since 2010, it's almost 12 years now, I would say that when Lagna is in Rasi Sandhi and 3 important planets are in Rasi Sandhi, the natives native life would not be so precisely defined. This is the general statement. The next thing, in Lagna, in the first house, the 9th house Lord Moon is residing, and we will assume that Mars is 0 degrees Scorpio. That means Mars is also residing in first house. So the Lagna and the Chandra Lagna, they both are same Scorpio, and for both of them the Lagnadipati is Mars, and Mars is residing in the first house. That means it will have a direct aspect on the 7th house. So the very first thing that one can say is that since the Lagna destiny is Scorpio, the Chandra Lagna is Scorpio, Mars is the Lagnadipati is, and the 6th house Lord also. 6th house is separation. 1st and 6th house Lord Mars is residing, and they all are having a direct aspect on the 7th house, indicates that the 7th house is completely dynamic. It got spoiled for sure, and it's very dynamic. So this is one positive side for this time of birth. The second thing is, if you look at it, the 4th house Lord is Saturn and the 5th house Lord is Jupiter, and both Saturn is having a direct aspect on the 4th house, its own house, and it is looking at the 5th house Lord Jupiter. So when Saturn is looking at the 4th house, generally speaking, and the 5th house Lord is over there, generally speaking, this is in 1950, he was born in 1950, so forget it. But currently in 2022, natives who are in the age of, like those natives who were born in 1990, after 1990, what I noticed is that if Saturn is the 4th house Lord and having it in some sort of a relationship with the 5th house Lord, and Saturn is also having the relationship with the 7th house Lord and the 12th house Lord in this chart, this type of planetary combination, when I noticed this, what I found is that that particular native will have a intercaste or inter-religion marriage, and the progeny will be because of the intercaste or inter-religion marriage. Because the 12th house Lord Venus, which is the pleasures of bed, Saturn is co-joined with the 12th house Lord, so for sure the native is supposed to have the pleasures of bed from outside his caste or his religion. And then Saturn is the 4th house lord, so the home life environment should be something related, something from outside his caste or outside his religion. Venus is the 7th house lord too, so the marriage has to happen that way. And Jupiter, the 5th house lord, is in 4th house, so the progeny should be somebody, the native should have the children born from someone who is outside his caste or his religion. So this is what, depending upon the era, we have to change the predictions. Since the native was born in 1950 and it was at that time, this type of getting intercaste and Indian religion marriage was not something that is predominant in India. That's the one of the reason why. And the native had a unstable 7th house married life, and that's another reason why the native might have got separated from his spouse, and that's another reason why the native did not have any progeny. The third, another thing I want to say, this is for the same time of birth, is Rahu is in 5th house, where there is a general statement that says wherever Rahu is residing, he will create chaos in that house and the house that he has a direct aspect. Here Rahu is in the 5th house, so he has to create a chaos with respect to relationship, with respect to his father, chaos with respect to progeny, children, and chaos with respect to higher education. We don't know what type of chaos he had it with respect to his father, but based upon the information that I had researched, he has no progeny, and that's number one. Number two is he has no higher education. I don't even think he had a basic education too. So this tells you that Rahu in the 5th house is correct. And then comes Rahu having a direct aspect on the 11th house. This is where a little bit confusion comes in, because if Rahu is having a direct aspect on the 11th house, he is looking at the 11th house lord, 8th and 11th house lord Mercury, and also he's also looking at that 10th house lord Sun. Sun is a leadership skills. So when Rahu is looking at the 10th house lord directly and 11th house lord directly, so there should be some sort of a ups and downs in the particular native's career when it comes to as a leader, whether it is a leadership roles or leadership skills. This is something that I have to check it out. The another thing, this is something that actually brings me a doubt whether this time of birth is correct or not. The next thing is Saturn. This is another thing. Saturn is residing in the 10th house, and it's owned by his bitter enemy Sun. So for sure Saturn, since he is residing in a house owned by his enemy, as usual Saturn wherever he resides, he shouts that he owns that house too. And now it is the house owned by his enemy, he will shout much louder, and which is the 10th house is career, number one. And then being in the 10th house, his habit is to spoil the house next to his residence, which is the 11th house. That's where the 11th house lord and the 10th house lord are residing. So if this time of birth is correct, the native would not be this much successful in his career, especially as a leader. So this is the second doubt I had it with respect to this time of birth. So overall, with this time of birth, the first confirmation that this time of birth is correct is based upon the impact on his 7th house, based upon the impact on his 4th and 5th houses. Oh, of course, and then based upon Saturn, that's it. And then the reason why this particular time of birth is not correct is number one, based upon him getting married to someone that is not from his caste or not belongs to his religion. That's that based on the chart, theoretically the native will be more inclined for that, which it did not happen. Number two, because Saturn is in the 10th house, that 10th house should be very dynamic. Number three, Saturn is spoil the house, 11th house, where the 10th house lord is residing, so it should be extremely dynamic. Number four, Rahu is having a direct aspect on the 11th house where the 10th house lord is residing. So there are four reasons that tells that the native should not be successful in his career as a leader, which we don't see it, the native is successful. So there are 4 reasons to say that this time of birth is wrong and only 2 reasons to say that this time of birth is correct. If you look at the birth chart for this particular native with the time being 12:09, means 9 minutes after noon, this was as per K.N. Rao, which I found out in the Wikipedia, somebody stating that K.N. Rao has the time as 12:09 p.m. So when I take the birth chart with this time of birth, the only difference that I found between the earlier one, which is at 11 a.m., which is famous and everybody is using it, the only difference that I found between that chart and this chart is that Lagna is not in Rasi Sandhi. Lagna is 16 degrees in Scorpio, precise in the center of it, because 30 degrees means full circle is 30 degrees. So it is 16 degrees means exactly in the center of the Scorpio. But still Mercury, Sun and Mars are still in Rasi Sandhi. There's no difference between the previous chart and this chart except this Lagna. Just because the Lagna is not in a Rasi Sandhi, whatever the predictions that I said earlier for 11 a.m. will be valid even for this particular time also. So there's no major changes in the chart based upon the chart in predicting between 11 a.m. and 12:09 p.m. This is according to my opinion. This was the time of birth that I got from the website called Hans, H-A-N-S, Hans India, and this particular article was published on 13th April 2021, and the author has chosen the time of birth as 11:40 a.m. So I used the same 11:40 a.m. to see what's the difference. Like I said earlier, there's no difference whether the time of birth is 11 a.m. or 11:40 a.m. or 12:09 a.m. The 3 important planets, Mercury, Sun and Mars, all the 3 are in Rasi Sandhi. Now, if it is 11 a.m., then the Lagna is in Lagna Sandhi. But at 11:40 a.m., Lagna is not in Lagna Sandhi, but Saturn is in Rasi Sandhi. This is very crucial here. Saturn being in Rasi Sandhi at 11:40 is a very, very crucial point to do for analysis. And the 11:40 and 12:09, for both of them, since Lagna is not in a Lagna Sandhi, the native has preferably better destiny. The destiny is not in a chaotic way. Now the question comes is, what's the impact if Saturn is in Rasi Sandhi? The Rasi Sandhi, if you look at it, if Saturn is in Leo, if you consider Saturn is in Leo, then whatever the predictions that I said earlier for 11 a.m. and 12:09 p.m. is valid, true for the same, for here also. But because it's in Rasi Sandhi, if you consider Saturn to be in the next Virgo, that means it has co-joined with the 10th house lord Sun and co-joined with the 11th house lord Mercury, and is having a direct aspect on Rahu, the 5th house. So if that's the case, then the chances for a native to rise so high as a leader is close to 0. So I don't think even this particular time of birth is also correct. This is the another time of birth that I got from Wikipedia, and where they said that a gentleman named Ashish Seth quotes from Vedic astrology website that this was the time given by Narendra Modi's elder brother during the Lok Sabha elections in 2014. So I picked up this time as 9:35 a.m. and generated this particular chart. Here, one thing, whatever the time of birth is, on that specific day between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on that specific day, Sun, Mercury and Mars, all the 3 planets are in Rasi Sandhi. So the only change that you see is the Lagna. What is the inclination of the Lagna? For this particular native, when the time of birth is 9:35 a.m., the Lagna is Libra, Tula Lagna. And whereas for the other two time, for the others, the Lagna is Scorpio. For 11 a.m. it is in Rasi, so Lagna is in Lagna Sandhi, and for 11:40 and 12:09 it's in normal Lagna, but the Lagna is still the Scorpio. Here what you can see here is the Lagna is Libra, Lagnadipati is Venus, and whenever the Lagna is with Libra, the native is, because it's called Tula Lagna, it's very balanced person. That particular native is very balanced, whether the native with respect to having a communication, whatever the talk, the communication skills that have is very balanced and very concerned when doing something, and looks from all the possible ways. That's the sign which I did notice from this particular gentleman, Mr. Modi. The way he talks is very balanced and thought-provoking. He doesn't rush for the words. He thinks before he says something. That's exactly what the basic feature of the Tula Lagna natives. That's the first thing. So one way, this particular time of birth seems to be correct for me. The second thing, the second most important is, let's go for the way with respect to his marriage. From Rasi Lagna, the 7th house is Mars, 7th house Lord is Mars, who is residing in the 2nd house and co-joined with the 10th house Lord Moon. Moon is mind. So the Moon, the 10th house Lord Moon is co-joined with the 2nd house Lord Mars and the 7th house Lord Mars. That's not a good sign. And next, from Chandra Lagna, Venus is the 7th house Lord and 12th house Lord too. And as I said earlier, from Chandra Lagna, when Venus is the 7th and 12th house Lord and it co-join with the malefic planet Saturn, when it comes to pleasures of bed or marriage, marital life, it will not be successful if the native has married someone that does belong to his own caste or his own religion. That's what you see here. This native has married. First of all, the native has a forced marriage. Second, it is in the same religion, same caste, and based upon this particular planetary combination, looks like the native is not interested in marrying because the Moon is 7th from Chandra Lagna. Venus is the 7th house, 12th house Lord, and that has co-joined with Saturn, and they both, Saturn and Venus, they both are looking at the 4th house, which is the Sukhasthanam, and 4th house Lord is Saturn again, and that's where you have the 5th house Lord Jupiter is residing, Putrasthanam, Putrasthanadipati Jupiter is residing. And this tells you, and even Jupiter is also the 2nd house Lord from Moon. So this tells you that because the Moon has co-joined with Mars and Venus co-joined with Saturn in this particular combination, the first event that happened seems to be valid. It seems to be valid. So now let's go to look at the second, third and fourth events, that is becoming the Chief Minister of Gujarat and becoming the Prime Minister of India. These are the two other important events I want to talk here for this particular time of birth. Moon is the 10th house Lord when you look from destiny. When the 10th house Lord is Moon, generally speaking, the career will be something related to the person's motherland. So because Moon talks about mother, and it is a career, so something that related to motherland is one type of career, and Moon is also mother, and it also deals with the healthcare industry. So it might be like some healthcare professional or pharmaceutical professionals or doctors, theoretical got doctors like a physicians, not a surgeon. But here, since Mars is co-joined there and Mars is a 6th house Lord, which is the employment conditions, the other possibility for this person is to become a surgeon, had he had the proper education. Next, from destiny, if that Moon is the 10th house Lord. From Chandra Lagna, Sun is the 10th house Lord, and Sun is in the 11th house, that is the play what you call financial gains. Place labhasthanam. So that when Sun is in the 10th house from Moon, naturally the native will be tending to get some gains with respect to the leadership skills that he has by birth, which is the Sun, because Sun is the 10th house lord. And if you look at it from Moon, the 6th house lord is Mars, which is again co-joined with Moon. 6th house is employment conditions, and that is the another reason like the native was a little bit aggressive in becoming the leader, like aggressive in the sense it's not a soft corner. When it comes to opportunity as a leader, he tries the best he can and proves that he is the only person who can be an alternative, and Mars is here to take care of that part of it. And because Mars is co-joined with Moon, emotionally he proves to everybody that he is an alternative for being the next leader, and that has been proven in 2001 when Gujarat, as a Gujarat chief minister, he proved himself, though he didn't have any experience, so-called administrative experiences, but still his aggressive approach had made people think that he is the best alternative for being the chief minister, and that's how he became the chief minister in 2001 for Gujarat. And that experience and that successful events that he has done over there as the chief minister has attracted most of the people in India, and they made him as the Prime Minister of India in 2014, and which had when the elections came again in 2019, they had re-elected him. So in 2001 as the chief minister, 2014 as the prime minister, 2019 as the prime minister, all the three events are basically because of the combination of Mars and Moon in Scorpio, and Moon being the 10th house, Sun being the 10th house lord and residing in the Labhasthanam. That's another reason why I'm more inclined to say that this might be the right time of birth for this particular native. Now that I had completed the basic chart analysis for the four times of birth that I got it from the internet, let me start analyzing the three important events for this particular native. The most important event is a person getting married. According to Wikipedia, the first predictive analysis that I'm doing is to figure it out when the person got married, what is the Vimsottari Dasa for all the 4 times that we had it, times of birth. In 1968 is when, according to Wikipedia, Mr. Modi got married. So when I looked at the transit analysis, the very first thing I found out is that transit Rahu and transit Saturn, they both are co-joined in Meena or Pisces, where the natal Rahu is residing for this particular native. So what I'm going to do is that since the exact date of marriage is not known, the only thing I can do is to take the Mahadasa and the Antardasa for this particular native in the year 1968. That means starting January of 1968 all the way till December of 1968. And then since the time of birth is almost close, the major Mahadasa, the Mahadasa and Antardasa will not change. The only thing is the planetary positions and the Rasi Lagna changes. So based on that, I will try to analyze individually for each time of birth and see which time of birth can closely adjust with the event that had happened. This is an astrological analysis that I'm doing for the first event, and I keep proceeding to the remaining events too. For this time of birth, it's 11 a.m. For this time of birth, the very first event that I'm analyzing is the marriage. The Neetu got married when he was 18 years old. That means September 1968 is when he got married. So anywhere between in the year 1968 is what we assume that he got married. But since it is 18 years, that I'm saying September, October, November, December of 1968 is what I'm thinking. But we don't know exactly when he got married. So if you look at the Vimsottari Dasa at the time of marriage, the very first thing is Mercury Mahadasa is running. Mercury is the 8th house lord and 11th house lord residing in the 11th house. And then Venus, I should say Sun Antardasa is running, because that is started in February and went all the way till December of 1968. Sun is the 10th house lord residing in the 11th house. 11th house is a house of desires. So, and if you look at it, both Sun and Mercury are having a direct aspect on the 5th house, progeny, where Rahu is residing. So if the marriage is something that, if this time of birth is correct, then the very first thing that happens is, if the Neetu is willing to get married, if the Neetu, because even from the moon also it is the same, the houses are same. Rahu is the one who has to initiate that event, because Rahu is in the 5th house and he has to who has to figure it out, the ability for progeny. And he is the one who is directly looking at the 11th house, which is the Kamasthanamo, or house of desires, or Kamasthanamo. So, and what I came to know is that the marriage was happened against his wish. So based on that, I think this, for this particular event, this time of birth is wrong. The second time of birth that I took was the one that according to Wikipedia, Mr. K.N. Rao had it, and it was at 12:09 p.m. And if I take that time of birth, then as I said earlier, the Mahadasa will not change it. It's Antardasa that might, and the Prachantardasa is for sure. So here at 12:09 p.m, the very first thing is the Lagna is not in Lagna Sandhi. While at 11 a.m. and 11:40, the Lagna was in Lagna Sandhi. But for 12:09 p.m, it is precise, it is exactly in the center of the house, that is 16 degrees in Scorpio. So the Lagna is precisely in the center, and Moon and Mars, Lagnadipati is Mars. Mars is residing in the 1st house, having a direct aspect on the 7th and 8th houses. Sorry, 4th, 7th and 8th houses. Mars is having a direct aspect. Moon, the 9th house lord, Dharmasthanadipati is Moon. He is having a direct aspect in the 7th house. So what you see here is that the 1st and the 6th house lord Mars, 6th house is house of separations, is having a direct aspect on the 4th house, Sukhasthanamo, or home life environment, 7th house Kalatrasthanamo, and 8th house is secret affairs. And Moon, the Dharmasthanadipati, is now looking only at the Kalatrasthanamo, the 7th house. So if you look at it, the possibility with the Moon being the Antaradasa, there is a slight possibility, I can say, that the Neetu might have got married based on this time of birth. But since the Neetu was being not willing to get married, and we know that the Neetu got separated as soon as he got married, there's a slight chance for this particular particular time of birth to be correct, but for this particular event, but it's not guaranteed. At least personally, based on my astrological knowledge, I'm not fully convinced to say that this particular Neetu got married with this time of birth. This is the another time of birth that was mentioned in Wikipedia by a gentleman named Ashish Seth, and according to that gentleman, the time of birth was 9:35 a.m. So if I take the chart at 9:35 a.m, one thing is the ascendant has been changed. The Lagna, rather than earlier times, the Lagna was Scorpio. This time the Lagna is Libra, and Lagnadipati is Venus. Venus is the 1st and 8th house lord, Venus, And if you look at it, Venus is residing in the 11th house, Kamasthanam or house of desires, co-joined with the 4th and 5th house lord Saturn, a malefic planet. So that's the first thing. Second, Moon is in the 2nd house, co-joined with the 2nd house lord Mars, 2nd and 7th house lord Mars. So, and Moon is the 7th, 10th house lord. So when for this particular Lagna, the Moon has no impact on it. So when you look at in the year 1968, Mercury Mahadasa is running, Venus Antardasa is running. So the Venus is the 1st and the 8th house lord residing in the 11th house. So that's a possibility that this could be true, number one. Number two is Venus is having a direct aspect on the 5th house, Putrasthanamu, and the 5th house, 4th and 5th house lord Saturn is co-joined with Venus. So that's okay. And then comes the question is, what are the pratyantara dasas? Jupiter, Saturn and Mercury. These are the 3 pratyantara dasas that are possible. And I'm more inclined to say that Mercury might be the reason, that is 1968 October till 1969 February. That might be the time when the native might have got married. The reason is Mercury is the 12th house lord. 12th house is pleasures of bed, and it has co-joined with, it's not only that, it has co-joined with the 11th house lord Kamasthanadipati Sun, and at the same time Saturn, who is residing in the house owned by Sun, his bitter enemy, so he's going to spoil the Kamasthanamo, the house, the 11th house, and wherever Saturn resides, the next house, he spoils the bhava of the next house, so he's going to spoil the bhava of the 12th house for this particular native. It shows you that Venus, the 1st house lord, has to be the person, means Dhanusthanadipati is the one who is getting impacted by this combination of Mercury, Venus, Mercury Mahadasa, Venus Antaradasa and Mercury Pratyantaradasa. So that might be the reason why I'm saying that this could be more, the time of birth is very close to the event that has happened, is because number one, the Lagna is Libra, Lagnadipati is Venus, Venus is the natural 7th house lord. So naturally the native, and then the Venus, the natural 7th house lord Lagnadipati is co-joined, is residing in the Kamasthanamo, the 11th house. Unfortunately, it is co-joined with Saturn, the 4th and 5th house lord, a malefic planet Saturn, the 4th and 5th house lords. And so the event can happen because of this reason. Then the question comes is, will the event be successful? The fact is the native got separated as soon as he got married. The reason is from Moon. From Moon, the 7th house lord is again Venus. And the 11th house lord is Mercury. And Mars has the direct aspect on the 4th from Moon. If you look at it, from the Mars, the 4th house, 1, 2, 3, and the 7th house and the 8th house. So Mars is looking at the 7th house from its natal position, and Mars is also looking at the 8th house from its natal position, which is owned by Mercury, and Mercury is the lord of the 11th house from Chandra Lagna. So as soon as the native got married, it is the Mars that might be the reason that has initiated the separation, of getting separated from a married life and going to something like a spiritual version of it, because the next Pratyantara Dasa is Ketu Pratyantara Dasa, and I'm sure between 1969 February and 1969 of April, that might be that period when the native has decided not to have a marital life and has left his wife and went for spiritual stuff. The second event that I I considered it for the analysis, for this predictive analysis, is when Mr. Modi became the Chief Minister of Gujarat. What I came to know is that on 3rd October, they had selected Mr. Modi to be the selector, or the party has selected, the party chief has selected Mr. Modi to be the next Chief Minister of Gujarat on 3rd of October, and he took the oath on 7th of October. So now that I got the precise date, I have to go to as detail as possible. That means in Vimsotari Dasa, I had to go look at the Mahadasa, Antardasa. I can't stop there. I have to go to Pratyantar Dasa, and if possible, the Sukshmantar Dasa too. So now that I got 4 times of birth, I'm trying to see like eliminate up to Mahadasa, Antardasa, Pratyantara Dasa, up to Pratyantara Dasa. I'm trying to see what are if there is any commonality, and if there is a commonality, then it is much easy to do the predictive analysis for the commonality charts, and then which is not common or which is different, then I will do a separate predictive analysis for that chart. So that at that time I'll be going more in detail to the Sukshmantara, the Satu, and then make sure that I do provide the analysis and see if that time of birth, whatever I'm talking about, has is closely matches with the event that has happened. The very first thing that one needs to see is when Mr. Modi became the Chief Minister of Gujarat on 7th of October 2001, what we need to see is Chief Minister of Gujarat means the leader for the state. So what planets did help the native to become the leader of a state? So generally speaking, it is the sun that is responsible a lot to make a person a leader, and it is the role of the sun. Here we already seen that sun is the 10th house lord. So for this particular time of birth, both 11 a.m. and 11:40 a.m., even since Rasi is in a Lagna Sandhi, since Lagna is in a Lagna Sandhi, let's keep that aside and just look at it. Like Sun is the 10th house lord and Sun is in the 11th house Labhasthanamu. So basically, that is a possibility that this particular native has the ability to become a leader. That's the first and the foremost thing, is to figure it out whether the planetary combination and planetary positions, does it say that the native has the ability to become a leader or not? Afterwards, we have to figure it out, was he a leader or not? First, the ability is proven with the assumption that the Lagna Sandhi, keeping with the assumption the Lagna Sandhi aside, there is an ability. Unfortunately, you have seen that the 10th house lord Sun is in Virgo, also is in a Rasi Sandhi. So if you assume that Rasi Sandhi to be taken off, then Sun will be in his own house. And Mars is also in Rasi Sandhi. Currently Mars is in his own house. If you take away the Rasi Sandhi, Mars will be in Libra. And Mercury is in Rasi Sandhi. Since Sun is in Rasi Sandhi, Mercury by default will be close to the very Sun. So Mercury will be also in Leo, where owned by the Sun. So if you keep ascendant, keep aside that there is no Lagna Sandhi, and you consider the 3 planets that are in Rasi Sandhi, then you see that there is no consistency, stability for this particular native's future as a leader. It's very, very unstable leader. That means the guy will become a leader for some time and then collapses. That's number one. Number 2 is, if you take the Lagna Sandhi and you assume that Lagna is not Scorpio, that the Lagna is Virgo, then everything changes. So by looking at this, even though it's a Venus Mahadasa and Saturn Antardasa that were running when the native was being chosen as the Chief Minister of Gujarat, the Pratitardasa is Jupiter, which is the, if you take it, the 2nd house lord, and the moon Sukshmantardasa, which is the 9th house lord. Up to that point, things seems to be fine. Then comes when did he sworn in? He was chosen on 3rd of October, that is Mars is the Sukshmantara Dasa, that Pratyantara Dasa, Pranantara Dasa, yeah, you should call it as a Sukshmantara Dasa. Pranantara Dasa is running after Sukshmantara Dasa, the Pranantara Dasa. As up to Sukshmantara Dasa is Moon, the Pranantara Dasa is Mars. Mars is the 6th house lord. 6th house is employment conditions, and Mars is residing in his own house. So the native Mars might have provided the native some strong will to for that employment condition. The employment is becoming the chief minister of Gujarat. And the next is Rahu. Rahu is on 6th or 7th of October. I think he became the 7th of October. So it will be Jupiter. Jupiter will be the one who will be the Pranantara Dasa for when he took the oath. Jupiter is the 2nd house lord residing in the 4th house, which is the home life environment or motherland, if you consider it as a country from a country perspective. So here is the thing. If we look at if we ignore the Lagna Sandhi, then this particular time of birth might be correct. Since if you consider the time of birth, then you cannot ignore the Lagna Sandhi. So that's another reason why I'm not comfortable using this time of birth, 11 AM and 11:40, as the time of birth for this particular native. The second possibility of time of birth is the time of birth that was provided to Mr. K.N. Rao by someone according to Wikipedia. And when I look at it, Venus Mahadasa, Mercury Antardasa, Venus Pratyantara Dasa, and I stopped at Pratyantara Dasa. So let's go and look at Venus and Mercury, role of Venus and Mercury. The first thing is both natal and at the time of when he took it, both natal and transit sun are in Virgo, co-joined with Mercury and having a direct aspect with natal Rahu. That means the 10th house lord sun, both transit and natal, are having a direct aspect on Rahu, or Rahu is having a direct aspect on them, on both the transit and natal sun. So there should be some sort of a chaotic situation arising in his career. He may rise up and fall down immediately. And then transit Rahu is residing in the 8th house owned by Mercury. Natal Rahu is looking at Mercury and looking at the house owned by Mercury. Transit Rahu is residing in the house owned by Mercury. And as I said earlier, since the Lagna is not in Lagna Sandhi, Venus residing in the 10th house and might have helped the native, which since Venus owns the 12th and the 7th house and not the 10th house, but since it is residing in the house owned by Sun, it might have helped it. And if you look at it, while transit natal Saturn and natal Venus are in the 10th house, transit Saturn is in the 7th house owned by Venus and having a direct aspect on natal Moon and natal Mars. So there is a slight possibility to say that this might be correct based upon the transit planetary positions, but at the same time, since the time of birth is, since there are 3 planets that are in Rasi Sandhi, and the Mahadasa that is running is not that strong with respect to career, I'm still having a benefit of doubt for this particular time of birth. Just like the earlier time of birth said, for that if the time of birth is considered to be 9:35 AM, the same thing. But here the Mahadasa is Venus, Antardasa is Saturn, and Pratyantara Dasa is Moon. But the major difference here that I found is, this is very important, the reason why I was more inclined with this 9:35 AM time of birth is because, first of all, Venus is the Lagnadipati. The Lagnadipati means Tanusthanadipati is Venus, and he is residing in the house owned by Sun, and he is also having a co-join with the Saturn. Saturn is the 4th and 5th house lord, but from Saturn is also residing in the house owned by Sun. And the next thing is Moon Pratyantara Dasa. Moon, if you look at it, Moon is the 10th house lord residing in the 2nd house, Dhanasthanamo. So the 10th house lord residing in the second house tells you that the native has, whoever the native is, will be acquiring wealth from his or her career. And here it is a moon is the 10th house lord. That career will be either something pertaining to motherland. Moon is a healthcare industry, and yeah, healthcare industry. Moon comes under healthcare industry or hospital, so that is related to motherly instincts, mother instincts or motherly instincts. So, and here Mars is co-joined with Moon, and if you look at it, Mars is the second house lord. So that particular instincts that we get it for this particular native, it should be very, very aggressive because Mars is there. So the reason I'm more inclined for this is because, as I said earlier, the natal Saturn is in the 10th house from natal moon, and so that Saturn and natal Venus is also in the 10th house from natal moon, and moon is the 10th house lord from Rashi Lagna. This is the strong reason why I think this particular during the moon Pratyantara Dasa, that means September 27th September 2001. After 27th September 2001 is when the native became very aggressive and had created an environment where the other party members are forced to accept him as their next leader for the state, and that might be the another reason why I think personally this particular time of birth is correct. The last event that I am taking for this particular native is on 26th May 2014. Mr. Modi is sworn in as the Chief Minister, as the Prime Minister of India. I'm sorry. In 2014, he was chosen as Prime Minister of India, and again, I think 5 years later, in 2019, he got re-elected. But the event happened in 2014. So this is the third event that I'm taking for doing my predictive analysis. And like I said earlier, since the date is clear, I will be doing up to Pratyantara Dasa, I will be going. And in case if there is any difference in Sukshmantara Dasa between the times of birth, then I will try to see which Sukshmantara Dasa could be the primary reason or one of the reasons for this particular native to become the leader of the country. So I'm hoping that this analysis would be helpful for you all to understand how to do the predictive analysis given the events are known, precisely the dates, and then how to figure it out whether the time of birth is correct if the time of birth is on a debatable version. Now that I had come to a conclusion, this is for my personal opinion, that the most probable time of birth for Mr. Modi is 9:35 a.m. as per Ashish Seth, which was mentioned in Wikipedia website. What I'm going to do is for the year 2022, using the transit planets superimposing on the native's birth chart for that time of birth, I'm trying to see what could happen for this particular native. The very first thing, today is January 20th of 2022. So at this time, on this date, transit Sun is in Makara Rasi, that means Capricorn, co-joined with transit Saturn. And transit Sun, if you look at it, both transit Sun and transit Saturn, they both are having a direct aspect on the 10th house from natal moon, and moon is the 10th house lord. And also transit Saturn's 10th aspect is on the 12th house. Venus is the lord for the 12th house from natal moon, and natal Venus and natal Saturn are co-joining in the 10th house, 10th house from moon. So this seems to be a little bit uh, challenging, especially when Sun is in Makara co-join with Saturn. The situation for this particular native when it comes to career is extremely challenging. Moon from natal moon, Sun is the 10th house lord, from natal moon, natal Saturn and natal Venus are in the 10th house, and now the transit Saturn and transit Sun are in the 3rd house but having a direct aspect on the 9th house, the Dharmasthanamo. Moon is the Dharmasthanadipati. It's a bit challenging. And oh yeah, and by the Mahadasa that is running is Moon too. So from destiny, from Rashi Lagna, Moon is the 10th house lord. From Chandra Lagna, Moon is the 9th house lord. So the things doesn't seems to be that encouraging for this particular native with respect to career as soon as the Moon Mahadasa started, which is clearly visible. Remember, when Moon Mahadasa started, I think he became the Prime Minister of India. Yes, he became the Prime Minister of India in 2014 when Moon Mahadasa started. But the surprising part is he got re-elected when Moon Mahadasa is running, that is until in 2019. And now until August of 2022, it's the Venus Antardasa that is going to run. And Venus, if you look from natal moon, Venus is the 12th house lord and the 7th house lord, and residing in the 10th house, co-joined with a malefic planet Saturn. And transit Saturn is in the 3rd house from its natal position, and I think for few months transit Saturn will be going to the 4th house from its natal position, that is between April, May, June of 2022, and that's when the native will face the Arthastama Shini impact. So basically speaking, April, May, June of 2022, the native will have some sort of a career related issues. To amplify this particular issue, these issues, if you look at it, transit Rahu will enter Mesha Rasi in March or April of 2022, and when transit Saturn is in Aquarius, the third aspect is on transit Rahu. So when the Ardhashtama Shani starts for this particular native somewhere in April of 2022 and lasts for 3 months minimum, I will say minimum 3 months. During those 3 months, April, May, June of these 3 months in 2022, the native will be having extremely challenging situations pertaining to his career, and there is a possibility for someone to challenge his leadership skills also. But keep in mind this will last only for 3 months, and then the dust gets settled by August of 2022, and from August of 2022 till January of 2023, this person will one more time prove that he is the best leader, and that is in until January of 2023. And keep in mind, I'm just stopping here at January of 2023 for 2 reasons. Number one, transit Saturn will leave Capricorn and enter the 4th house Aquarius for him in January of 2023. That is when the full-fledged Ardhashtama Shani will begin for this particular native. Number two, Moon Mahadasa will end in January of 2023. So the new planet Mahadasa will start, and that's probably what we are going to see is that with the Moon Mahadasa ending, the next one should be Mars approximately. So Mars, if you look at Mars from the natal moon, Mars is the Lagnadipati for 1st and 6th house lord. One more time, remember in 2001 2001 October, it is the same Mars that had created an aggressive situation and made the BJP party members and leaders. It created an environment in such a way that the party leaders and the party had no other option but to force him to select him as the Chief Minister of Gujarat. Something similar, see, environment will be created in 2023 January, where probably the the party and even all the supporters will be forced emotionally to accept him as the next leader, and looks like in 2023 is when he will be starting for his third term election campaign. So let me wait till January of 2023 for this particular native. Looks like, as I said, just a to repetition of what I said, it April, May, June of 2022 will be very challenging for this particular native when it comes to his career. And July, August are the 2 months where the dust slowly gets settled, and from August till December he will prove one more time that he is the best leader for the country. This is what I could see based on this time of birth. So let me wait till January of 2023 and see if what I predicted is close to the reality. Let me conclude this presentation with 3 important items that I want to talk about for the year 2022. For this particular native, Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, I'm considering the time of birth as 9:35 a.m. According to Ashish Seth. In Wikipedia, I found out that it is something very close by, and I analyzed it and I felt like that is the right time of birth to the best of my astrological knowledge. So what I'm going to do right now is analyze for the year 2022, if they're based upon the 3 slow moving planets, what could happen for this particular native. The very first thing that I noticed is somewhere in the month of March or April of 2022, transit Rahu will be moving to Aries, Mesha, and approximately the same time, transit Saturn will go to Aquarius, stay there for 3 months and then come back. So when transit Saturn goes to Aquarius or Kumbha Rasi, that will be the 4th house from natal moon for this particular native. That means when transit Saturn goes to Kumbha or Aquarius, for this particular native, Ardhashtama Shani is supposed to start. And when transit Saturn is in Aquarius, the 3rd house from there is Mesha. That's where the transit Rahu is going to stay. So this Ardhashtama Shani for this particular native, which is going to stay for 3 to 4 months maximum in the year 2022, is going to be highly complicated. And now, since Moon is the 10th house lord from Rashi Lagna and the 9th house lord from Chandra Lagna, 10th house is career, 9th house is Dharmasthanamu, and now the Ardhashtama Shani is starting in that 3-month period. So the native will have some ethically challenging issues pertaining to his career. That's the first thing. And the second thing is somewhere even the Mahadasa is Moon and the Antardasa is Venus. So Venus is in the 10th house from natal moon. So naturally, it would be a little bit challenging. And then when you look at it, the Venus Antardasa will end somewhere in August of 2022. So by that time, the Ardhashtama Shani for this particular native will be done. Transit Saturn will come back to Capricorn, Makara, and then in August, September, October, November, December, those 4 months, the Antardasa is Ravi, Sun Antardasa, with Moon Mahadasa going. So whatever the issues that the native had during the Ardhashtama Shani, whether most of them, I should say, is related to ethical related issues, the dust gets settled by August, and in September onwards, September till December, those 4 months of year 2022, the native will one more time prove that he is the best leader for the country, showing his abilities, his leadership skills, and that would again make this native come back from whatever the issues that he had it in the month of from March through June of 2022. These are my predictions based upon to the best of my astrological knowledge. So please use these predictions for educational purposes only. And this is January of 2022. So I will be updating in YouTube somewhere in August of 2022 if what type of challenges did the NATO face, if I hear anything in the news media. And then again in December of 2022, I will be updating how the NATO got back from, proved his leadership skills. These predictions are based on the time of birth that I got it from Wikipedia. I'm hoping that this would be the very closest to time of birth that I can get it with respect to this particular NATO. Thank you very much for watching this video. And I'm hoping that this presentation, those who are had astrological background, or those who are interested in to learn astrology, I'm hoping that this predictive analysis provided you some sort of a knowledge or taught you how to move forward doing a predictive analysis from an astrological perspective. Thank you very much.
Disclaimer. Last updated, May 29, 2020. Interpretation and definitions. Interpretation. The words of which the initial letter is capitalized have meanings defined under the following conditions. The following definitions shall have the same meaning regardless of whether they appear in singular or in plural. Definitions. For the purposes of this disclaimer, company, referred to as either the company, we, us or are in this cookie's policy, refers to Astrological astrological series. You means the individual accessing the service, or the company, or other legal entity on behalf of which such individual is accessing or using the service, as applicable. Application means the software program provided by the company downloaded by you on any electronic device named Astrological astrological series. Service refers to the application. Disclaimer. The information contained on the service is for general information purposes only. The company assumes no responsibility for errors or omissions in the contents of the service. In no event shall the company be liable for any special, direct, indirect, consequential, or incidental damages or any damages whatsoever, whether in an action of contract, negligence or other tort, arising out of or in connection with the use of the service or the contents of the service. The company reserves the right to make additions, deletions, or modifications to the contents on the service at any time without prior notice. This disclaimer has been created with the help of the disclaimer generator. The company does not warrant that the service is free of viruses or other harmful components. External links. Disclaimer. The service may contain links to external websites that are not provided or maintained by or in any way affiliated with the company. Please note that the company does not guarantee the accuracy, relevance, timeliness, or completeness of any information on these external websites. Errors and omissions. Disclaimer. The information given by the service is for general guidance on matters of interest only. Even if the company takes every precaution to ensure the content of the service is both current and accurate, errors can occur. Plus, given the changing nature of laws, rules and regulations, there may be delays, omissions or inaccuracies in the information contained on the service. The company is not responsible for any errors or omissions, or for the results obtained from the use of this information. Fair use. Disclaimer. The company may use copyrighted material which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. The company is making such material available for criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research. The company believes this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Section 107 of the United States Copyright Law. If you wish to use copyrighted material from the service for your own purposes that go beyond fair use, you must obtain permission from the copyright owner. Views expressed. Disclaimer. The service may contain views and opinions which are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other author, agency, organization, employer or company, including the company. Comments published by users are their sole responsibility, and the users will take full responsibility, liability and blame for any libel or litigation that results from something written in or as a direct result of something written in a comment. The company is not liable for any comment published by users and reserve the right to delete any comment for any reason whatsoever. No responsibility disclaimer. The information on the service is provided with the understanding that the company is not herein engaged in rendering legal, accounting, tax, or other professional advice and services. As such, it should not be used as a substitute for consultation with professional accounting, tax, legal or other competent advisors. In no event shall the company or its suppliers be liable for any special, incidental, indirect, or consequential damages whatsoever arising out of or in connection with your access or use or inability to access or use the service. Use at your own risk disclaimer. All information in the service is provided as is, with no guarantee of completeness, accuracy, timeliness or the results obtained from the use of this information, and without warranty of any kind, express or implied, including, but not limited to warranties of performance, merchantability and fitness for a particular purpose. The company will not be liable to you or anyone else for any decision made or action taken in reliance on the information given by the service or for any consequential, special or similar damages, even if advised of the possibility of such damages. Contact us. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, you can contact us by email, jura@gmail.com.